Hello everyone, Simon Jacobson here. Another episode of Meaningful Live. This is part of our Zodiac series, What the Stars Say About You. Cancer. So, in the previous parts of this series, we've discussed the different personality archetypes relevant not just to those that are born in this period, but to all of us as we travel through this time period, because time is energy. So let's move to Cancer. First of all, the first reaction when people hear the word cancer, especially today, is a very negative one. We all know what cancer is. The tragic, the horrendous illness that strikes people, unfortunately. May everyone be protected. And drives fear into our very heart, just the word itself. So it's interesting that is associated with it. Why is cancer called cancer? I'm talking about the disease, the illness, is because when it was first named, it resembled, the spread of cancer resembled a crab. Cancer is crab. The way it spread its legs and so on, it was similar to the way we saw cancer within the human body. But regardless, when you think of it that way, you realize there's probably much more going on here. And what exactly is the symbolism and the meaning of a crab? Cancer, crab. In Hebrew, the word for the zodiac, for this sign, for this month, is sartan, which also is used in both contexts, both the animal and the illness. So let's talk about this. What's interesting is also in this hemisphere, the upper hemisphere, meaning places like the United States and Europe and so on, it's also the beginning of the summer months. As a matter of fact, summer months are sometimes considered all into this category of this Hebrew month, Tamuz, the next 3 months, which are more or less the summer. Now, summer is an interesting paradox as well, and we'll be talking about the paradoxes of life, because that's really what a crab represents, what cancer represents. Two extremes. So let's begin with a very basic observation, a basic study. A crab goes into the category of the animals that are crustaceans, which means that they have a exoskeleton, not a skeleton within, a skeleton that covers them up. And depending, a younger crab, it could be 6 times a year, later 2-3 times a year, or once a year, that it will go into that molting period where the crab is growing, but the shell is not. So what happens is the crab will slowly crack open the outer shell as a new shell develops and will crawl out in every possible way. Its limbs, its eyes, everything will emerge from the old shell, and the crab will now have a new shell, and the crab will go through this process several times in its lifetime. Quite a few times, actually. So what is the interesting twist here? As the lesson in life, this has been pointed out by many, that it teaches us about pressure in life, stress. Most of us, when we have stress, the first thing we do is we take a painkiller. Or we take some other way to numb it, to ignore it. Now, if a crab took a painkiller, it would never shed its skin and it would die. So the first thing we learn is that growth means a type of pressure and stress that allows you to expand, and therefore you have to remove a previous state of mind, your previous comfort zone, so to speak, the shell of yesterday, in order to grow into something larger and greater. It's a tremendous lesson in life. The lesson similar to the story with the caterpillar and the butterfly. We all know a caterpillar metamorphosizes into a butterfly. Now, it takes time as it goes through the chrysalis and the cocoon. So the story goes that there was an individual watching the butterfly beginning to emerge from its cocoon after months of being in that state. And the butterfly is struggling to get out of the cocoon. This compassionate person felt sad for the butterfly, so he took a knife. And cut open the cocoon so the butterfly can easily get out. Okay, he opens the cocoon, And what happens? The butterfly is sitting there and he's waiting for the butterfly to take flight. No such thing. And then he realized and he learned the lesson. The butterfly, in order to fly, needs the aerodynamics in its wings. The pressure, as the butterfly struggles, exerts itself to get out of the cocoon, forces liquid into its wings, so it will have the proper balance, the proper aerodynamics necessary to fly. By preventing the butterfly from struggling, he actually did it a great disservice. He destroyed its life, basically, because it didn't struggle, and therefore the liquid never got into the wings. So it was a grounded butterfly. We have to understand, stress is not a comfortable thing. Obviously not. And it's not an end in itself. It's a process. It's every form of growth. If you're truly growing from one stage to another, there's going to have to be some form of stress, some form of discomfort. Because that's exactly what it is. It's a disruption. In Kabbalistic terminology, it says yesh, which is one state of being, one paradigm. To grow into another paradigm, to another yesh, you need an ayin. That's the Hebrew word. And ayin means a vacuum, a void. An uncomfortable place to create that transition. Because if it's just a continuation of the past, then it's not going to be new. It won't be growth. So true growth is always going to be preceded by some form of discomfort. So instead of trying to avoid it, let us embrace it and understand its purpose. That's the first lesson of the crab. So the paradox is that not everything that seems painful or seems difficult is bad for you. It may actually be a blessing. The paradox is it doesn't look like a blessing. But when we read about cancer, we hear about cancer, you suddenly realize that. And indeed, this month, in the Hebrew calendar, is a month of paradoxes. This month of Tamuz, the very word Tamuz in Hebrew, has a meaning called heat, like from the name summer. But heat, we know, can go both directions. Heat, passion, can destroy you and others, or it could also be channeled and harnessed toward beautiful things. Tamuz is also the name of an idol. And at the same time, Tamuz has in this month the beginning of the destruction of the temple. But then we're told by the prophet that the purpose of the destruction would ultimately lead to the transformation of darkness to light. So this month is symbolic of that type of experience in life. There's a certain part that is beautiful, but it has to emerge sometimes from the challenges of life. And the lesson is very, very clear. That growth is going to consist of removing an old shell, one layer of skin to assume another layer of skin. For those born or those experiencing this period of time, it has that dual characteristic. So on one hand, it does have a negative imagery. The crab itself is sometimes identified with indulgence. It's a water creature. It's associated with water in the symbols of it. It's also the only sign that's controlled by the moon. The moon is another paradox. On one hand, the moon has no light of its own. To quote the Zohar, the classic mystical text, the moon has no light of its own. It receives its light from the sun, but when it receives the light, it has a very different type of experience. It's not just a mirror image of the sun. There's something about the mystique, the haunting color and shape of the moon. You see two people in love, you never see them staring at a sun, you see them staring at the moon. The moon controls the tides on earth. The moon has a unique relationship with us on earth. And it has that same paradox. It waxes and wanes. So when it's waxing, it grows into something great, and then it begins to wane. It begins to shed a previous layer, a previous shell, and is about to become extinct. It's reborn again. The symbolism of birth. In Hebrew, the word for month, the lunar month, means rebirth, renewal, chodesh, chidush. So newness requires leaving something behind from the past. You look at a physical crab and you see that. So cancer represents that element. The personality of cancer, you'll find people who have a certain sensitivity, but usually sensitivity and empathy does come with understanding these dual sides. It also teaches us that life is a process and a journey. So as we begin the summer months, the summer as well offers us the same challenge. On one hand, the summer we all look forward to as a certain time of relaxation, of calm, warmth, and everything that comes with it. Vacation, which is beautiful, allow time for rest, time for reflection. But as we all know, that the summer also can be a very big time of indulgence, many challenges involved. The cold winter months don't quite have that same type of expansiveness because we're either closed up locked up in a room or home due to the cold out there. And cold in general is something that really keeps us, we need to protect ourselves from. The warmth opens us up, connected warmth with water. You see people going to the beach, other water. So this is a summer. So summer has on one hand a powerful force at work, which is the very heat, the light, longer days, and everything that the summer elicits, midsummer night's dream. But we have to also be careful from the other side, not to become too comfortable, to realize that perhaps on a material level we can be more relaxed, but on a spiritual level, on a transcendent level, this is a great opportunity to grow into new states and new levels of our expanding our horizons. So you see that the signs are not just signs, but they also reflect the time of the year and how it affects each of us in our lives. What do they say in the recovery movement in healing? They say if nothing changes, nothing changes. I like to put it this way. If you think what you thought and you say what you said, you're going to have what you had. I should add, if you think what you thought, you say what you said, you do what you did, you're going to have what you had. It's a mathematical certainty. Brilliant, right? But what is it really saying? We like change, but we don't necessarily want to change. So if nothing changes, nothing changes. But it doesn't work that way. What is insanity? Doing the same thing, expecting different results. So this month of Cancer opens us up to another way of looking at things. In previous signs, in previous months, each part of the zodiac, each dimension had its own particular energy. Here, this is an energy of transition, an energy of paradox, an energy of appreciating the vicissitudes, the ups and downs of life. And if you think about it, actually, wherever we turn, we see that. Your heartbeat is continuously beating, contraction, expansion. Your breath, exhale and inhale. There's no such thing as a static life, as a stagnant life. Life, by definition, is mobile. It's pulsating. It's vibrating. I remember once speaking to a cardiologist, a very sweet guy, used to come to my classes, and he was one of the sweetest guys I knew, but he had a very difficult life, a lot of difficulties, personal, family. He was a cardiologist. So one day he asked me, he says to me, out of exasperation, he says, perhaps you can just intervene up there, and I'd like to have a day of peace, a life of peace. Just calm relaxation. So he was an intelligent guy. He liked a good joke as well. So I said, do you mean, doctor, like a flat line? He said, no, not that peaceful. Because a cardiogram is not a flat line. That's not what you want to see. You want to see a perfect wave. Yes, a peak, a valley, but all very measured and very commensurate to each other, proportionate. You don't want to have extreme peaks, which is extreme anxiety, or extreme valleys, which is extreme resignation. You want to have the proper balance between angst and integration, between some measure of restlessness, yes, in order to grow a new shell, in order to become a greater person. And that's what growth is all about. That's how it grows. Right now, you probably don't even aware of it. You're not aware of it. You probably took between 15, I say probably for sure, between 15 and 18 breaths, exhaling and inhaling the last minute. Who even thinks about it? Thank God we don't have to think about it. When you see someone struggling to breathe in a hospital with a ventilator, God forbid, suddenly you appreciate what are the dynamics, the mechanics necessary. So breathing is a perfect example, it's like the heartbeat of the pulsation of the pulsating forces in life. And that's how we have to see our lives. The thing is, in our world, interestingly, with all technology and all its growth and its acceleration, we are slowly becoming more like couch potatoes. I could sit at my desk, lie in my bed, in my couch, and just press buttons. Press buttons, channel changers, or to order something. And that's creating a situation, ironically, where all of technology is based on these pulsating energies, that we become couch potatoes, meaning moving about less and less. I understand we're told to exercise, so we go out to exercise. But the natural human being is a living, mobile entity. It's constantly on the move. And movement means that there's going to be changes, and changes means there are going to be moments of discomfort. Now, of course, we pray and hope that it should be minimal. It shouldn't be anxiety-ridden. It shouldn't be extreme. But we must have that angst. We must have the angst of the cancer. We must have it. And that's what is a result of our growth and allows us to grow further. So as the crab molts, what's happening is the pain, that the pressure that's building up as the crab grows out of the shell, which has not grown, causes the crab to shed that shell and ultimately assume another one. Tremendous lesson in our lives. I know some of you may ask the question, seeing me, look at me, I look pretty Jewish, right? What about the fact that crab is a non-kosher animal? Yeah, but it's still God's creation. And as God's creation has many lessons for us. You know, there's a very fascinating story how King David, who always praised God's world and saw the beauty in every aspect of detail of design of the world, once said to God, I understand all the different creatures and animals, but what about the spider? He couldn't find a purpose for the spider. Well, as fate would have it, he was being pursued by King Saul, the Bible tells us, and he had nowhere to run. The only place was a cave. He ran into the cave, but there he was stuck, because if they would come in there, he had no place to escape. And God sent a spider to weave a web across the mouth of the cave. Of course, if a spider weaved a web, it's a pretty good sign that nobody has entered there for a while. So they passed on, the soldiers just moved on, and he realized how this spider has saved his life. Everything in existence has a tremendous lesson for us. And that's exactly why it's created. Some things are meant to be eaten, some things are not meant to be eaten. Just like there are many things. There are poisonous mushrooms, there are many different foods or other items that we can learn from it. That doesn't mean we have to consume it. And that indeed is also another paradox of the crab. It may be non-kosher, it is non-kosher. But at the same time, like I said before about the month of Tamuz, that may not be a non-kosher animal, but it teaches us tremendous lessons about life. And sometimes the deepest lessons come from the darkest places. There's an expression in the Talmud that says to cut down a tree, you need the wood of the tree to cut down the tree. An axe, the handle of the axe is made from the wood of the tree. That's ultimate transformation. So in many ways, when we have setbacks and negative experiences in life, it's not just that we should grow from it and embrace it because it's a process of growth. It's also transforming even the setback into part of the process. It's one spinning wheel life, one long narrative with many different frames. And look at your life that way, and things change. We get often caught up right now, I'm comfortable, I'm uncomfortable, the moment, instant gratification. We like to press a button. But remember, life is a process, and an emerging one at that. A process means that things are on the move. When you see it that way, even when something may appear as a setback or is a setback, pain, loss, suddenly you feel restless. Nobody likes it. That's exactly why it's so powerful. We like our comfort zones. But as in the process of growth, in the name of growth, we grow through those comfort zones. So, tremendous lesson in life. I hope I did some justice to it. I'm sure more to say, much more to say. May we all grow in our lives, grow to the greatest heights, but always know that the greater the growth, the more the frustration, the more the vacuum, the more the even disorientation that will precede it. That's how it is. If you ever wrote a paper or anything that you ever presented, there's always going to be that awkward state, that confused state, because you're moving from one paradigm to the next. May those paradigms continue to come our way. Let's not resist, let's not escape them, and learn how to grow to being the best and greatest possible person you can be. This has been Simon Jacobson, what the stars say about you, tell us about you, what the stars can teach us about you. Cancer. As I said, Simon Jacobson from Meaningful Life Center, meaningfullife.com. Please subscribe to our growing and robust YouTube channel. Check us out at meaningfullife.com. There are other offers of other subscriptions that we offer, free subscriptions, a wide array of materials that cover the entire spectrum of life. Love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your comments, and above all, share. Please share. Grow well. May our comfort zones only lead us to some discomfort where we grow into something far, far greater. Be well and be blessed. Thank you.